Brace yourselves for a tidal wave of yet more Syrian refugees. Yep, they're fighting each other in Syria again. And our former ambassador to the country thinks a flood of people are heading our way. So does Nigel Farage, who says that the crackpots in the EU will open the floodgates, and that means they'll all be banging on our doors soon. Now, I don't think we should take a single one. We've done our bit. British taxpayers do their bit every single day, paying for the illegal immigrants that we've already got. Britain is not the world's policeman. It's not our responsibility. I tell you what should be our responsibility: our own people. When are we going to start putting them first? I mean, Europe experimented with the mass importation of refugees from that part of the world, and the experiment failed. Remember what happened in Cologne on New Year's Eve a few years ago?
A day after the allegations of mass sexual assault were made public, Cologne continues to search for the perpetrators and for answers. How could things get so out of hand?
I wonder. Yeah, groups of Arab men went on a mass sexual assault spree. Oh, and remember this from a few months ago? A Syrian asylum seeker stabbed 3 people to death at, ironically, a festival of diversity. We know that ISIS and other terrorist groups are exploiting the migrant crisis to send terrorists to Europe and Britain. Now, we've had the case of Syrian brothers Omar and Mohammed Bedreddin, and they were actually jailed in Britain for multiple counts of rape, including that of a 13-year-old girl. I don't think we need to let any more people in, do we? Look, I'm absolutely not saying that they're all rapists, murderers and terrorists, OK? But what I am saying is that we clearly can't police it, can we? Now, prominent Islamic voices on social media are saying things like, may Allah protect the people of Syria. Well, OK, but I would politely ask, from what? The people of Syria? I mean, we are full now here. We haven't got enough houses. We haven't got enough money. We haven't got enough schools. We haven't got enough GPs. I am sympathetic, very sympathetic, to anyone caught up in this conflict. But whilst we have homeless veterans, freezing pensioners, and an NHS backlog that, frankly, could form a single-file queue from here to Syria, I'm afraid that many of those so-called refugees are simply not our problem.
Using the internet without a VPN is a bit like taking to the road without car insurance. All it takes is one unlucky moment to cost you a lot of cash. We want to help protect you. This video's sponsor, Private Internet Access, is the VPN to help keep you safe. Now, you might be asking, what is a VPN? Well, a virtual private network is an app that hides your IP address and safeguards your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. This way, it shields your digital life from the eyes of those that are looking to exploit your private information. Whenever you connect to the internet on a public Wi-Fi network, such as at airports, coffee shops, friends' houses, or even in your own home, your data is at risk of being stolen. Hackers that are connected to the same Wi-Fi network have the ability to steal your personal data with ease. T-Mobile reached a settlement this year with the US Federal Communications Commission after they suffered data breaches in 2021, 22 and 23. In 2023 alone, over 37 million customers' data was exposed. And it's not just hackers to be concerned about. Information can be censored. When Canada passed their C-18 bill, social media giants decided to ban news content on their platforms. But PIA can protect your ability to consume the news content that you love. Private Internet Access is available for all platforms: Windows, macOS, Android, Linux, iOS, and you can use one Private Internet Access subscription to protect an unlimited number of devices at the same time. Plus, we've got a huge GB News discount. Click the link in this video's description and you'll get 83% off PIA. That is under £2 a month, and you'll get an extra 4 months completely free. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee. So head to piavpn.com/GB News. to start protecting yourself digitally.
Let's get thoughts from my panel this evening. I'm joined by the former Tory Minister for Common Sense, the wonderful Esther McVey. We've also got political commentator Alex Armstrong and journalist Jonathan Liss. There we go. Esther, look, should we take any of them, do you think, in this latest Syrian conflict?
No.
Right.
And I'd say we can't cope with the volume and the speed with which people are already coming into the country. And I'd say there's nothing compassionate about bringing into a country that we cannot cope. You mentioned before, sort of the house places, you know, the homes, the schooling, the GPs. And then you've got to look at the issues at home. I think you've got to look at the fear in local communities about whether people have been vetted properly. And we're seeing this, the tensions bubbling up in local communities. And I think this is a massive issue. You've got to look at national security. So I'd say, no, we can't take any more. We've got enough people here that we've already got to look after for the time being.
Jonathan, your views on this. Should we be throwing our arms around the Syrians who are caught up in this particular conflict now, do you think?
I mean, Patrick, we've discussed this issue so many times, and I kind of feel that the point you often make is that there is some kind of deception being made in the people who come across the boat, so they are actually economic migrants. And by your own admission, what we're talking about in this particular issue, which, by the way, hasn't happened yet, this is, I would say, fear-mongering over something that hasn't even happened.
The former ambassador to Syria, by the way.
Well, okay, fine, but there is no one's denying that the war in Syria is still going, and there are people, there are millions of displaced people inside Syria. And what a fact that we often conveniently forget to mention is that the vast majority of refugees are actually in neighbouring countries, and they're in internally displaced camps in those countries. The vast majority never ever leave the borders of the country where this stuff is happening. But obviously some of them do. So the problem is that in this particular case, we're talking about genuine refugees. And I think that is something that you're implicitly accepting. These are genuine refugees, and refugees by any accepted definition of that term. And it then falls on us to ask the question and answer the question, what happens to refugees who've been forced from their homes by forces that are completely outside their control? Do we just force them to go to...
Really sorry, we've taken...
Well, do we force them all to live in Turkey? What would you say if this were a Turkish TV channel? They might be saying, well, why should we be shouldering all of the responsibility for this just because we're the nearest safe country? We have to do our bit.
There's loads of good reasons as to why that is. Like, culture is one of them. You know, we don't share a similar culture to Syria in any way, shape or form. And rather than taking people into a foreign country where they're not going to assimilate very well, they can't speak the language, let's put them, as you correctly said earlier,
most of them
they're closer with religion at least. There are
plenty of Muslim communities in this
Well, then
country.
let's just send them to Jordan. Let's send aid to Jordan. Let's do this sensibly, right? We should have net zero immigration into this country, let alone be taking more refugees. As you said, Patrick, our country's full. Our GP surgeries are overflowing. We've got hotels up to our eyeballs. And quite frankly, I'm more concerned at what's going on in Syria because we've got Islamist terror groups who are going to seize control. I hope Assad crushes them. I really do. I hope Assad crushes them.
Well, you're specifically with this particular...
I'm in favour of Assad crushing an Islamist terrorist group rather than him who's actually keeping the country together. Have we not learned our mistakes from the Arab Spring? Have we not learned our mistakes?
One of the things that I was going to ask, because we have actually had a direct example of the previous Syrian conflict during which Germany decided to allow, roughly speaking, between 1 and 2 million people in a very short space of time into Central Europe, and then, of course, they dissipated out around, and there were other people who came as well. And it didn't really work out that well, did it, Esther? So why would we do it again?
I go back, Jonathan, we have been a very tolerant country. We've taken in many, many people. We're saying now, as we stand, where we cannot take in and look after the people who are already coming here legally and illegally. Let's plan ahead, and the answer is no. We can't deal with what we've got. And you're quite right, it doesn't work well if you can't assimilate people into your country. And you do have to look after the people who are here already, and that's my big thing. What are you doing for the people who are here already? As a local MP, I am getting calls from local residents concerned about hotels that are now full of people. They don't know where they're from, what they're doing, how they integrate, are they working? So you've really got to balance that up, and to think otherwise and to think that you can be benevolent to the world, no, you can't.
It seems such a miserable and bleak assessment of our own country.
Not at all, not at all.
Oh, we
not
can't
at all.
possibly
we
do our bit to help
are a
people who
country
are in
that
need.
has led the world,
Jonathan,
and we've supported many.
We can help people.
There are people
We can help
in
people.
the train station past Paddington who are sleeping rough on the
Yeah,
streets.
and that's a political
if you're
choice.
telling me you want to help people from a foreign country with a war we've had no direct involvement in over those people, then I think the morality of this country has gone so far down the
Why
pan.
is it a zero-sum game? Why do you have to make these choices?
Well, then tell me why there are people still homeless in Paddington.
Well, that's a very, very good question.
Fix the foundations.
Because governments...
Keir Starmer keeps banging about fixing the foundations. Why don't we fix it for people who live here first?
Well, governments have made a decision over many years in different political stripes not to address the issue of homelessness, just as governments have made a decision to deliberately impoverish people or to turn the other way while children, for example, are in poverty. Now, we can argue about that, but to say that we have to choose between helping some people and helping other people is just false.
Do you think this could be a tactic by the rebels themselves to destabilise other countries, make sure what they're going to do is cause a disturbance, a movement of people? They know they're going to be attacked from the out, which they are by Syria and Russia, and then they flee to the rest of the world. Do you think these rebels, are using people as a form of sort of warfare, pushing them to other countries to destabilise them? Don't we need to stop those rebels? Don't we need to stop them doing what they're doing? That's what I'd say.
Well, Esther, I mean, I think that Assad is a brutal dictator, and this country.
I don't dispute that.
Right. Okay. So I don't think that. I don't necessarily. And I obviously we need to know exactly who these rebels are, because there have been very, very acceptable quote unquote rebels in that country who we have de facto supported over the course of this long and brutal civil war. So obviously it's a complicated
what
situation.
I've just said.
Look, I think that obviously it's important when you have people fleeing a conflict zone that they should be vetted in an appropriate way. I'm not saying that you should fling over, but that is what the whole process is there to
because it's not. This is the example right now of what's going on in Syria. A little while ago it was Sudan. Before that, and continuing to be, is Eritrea, and we've got Somalia. And then you start adding it all up. Are we the world's charity case?
But no,
why is it us?
Patrick, the question...
Why does it have to be us?
question. It's not about...
Would you take Syrian refugee into your home?
That is again, it's just a complete deflection tactic.
It's not
about individuals. It's not about individuals.
Right, okay.
It's about governments. It's about governments. And you make it sound like we're the only country that's having this conversation. And actually, countries
all... It's not about individuals.
It's about... Countries all over Europe and the Western world are having a conversation about about our interconnectedness as a global community and how many refugees they take. It's not only Britain that's saying we should take refugees and while no one else is. Everyone has to.
When you hear that, which is all right, it's a perfectly fine answer, but I mean it's a hard no on taking a Syrian refugee. I didn't say
that. I said I said it was irrelevant to the question. If I had the space and the capacity, of course I would.
That's always the answer, though, isn't it? It's if I had the space. And what does it tell you? We're full. We haven't got the space.
Well, I don't think you can extrapolate from my flat about the situation of the country.
No, yeah, but Jonathan, you are representative of millions of other people.
I'm not representative of anyone. I'm not even representative of myself.
Where else are they going to go? What homes are you talking about?
But what I don't want us to get away from, we have been very generous as a nation. It's not like we've said no. Look how many people have come across into this country.
Millions.
How many people have come illegally into this country. We're not short of single men of a certain age in this country. They've all been coming in private. We have got to be careful and look after our own country.
You're right. And the thing that upsets me the most is when I see that pensioners will freeze this winter and we're spending $5 billion from 2022 to 2023 on refugees and asylum seekers. I get angry. I get really angry about that because I want people who have paid into this system to be looked after in our country. And unfortunately, I do hold the previous government that you served under in contempt for that because they obviously didn't solve the crisis either. And I know you'll acknowledge that, Esther. But we've got to start with people at home.
I promise you, Alice, if they reinstated the winter fuel cuts, reinstated the winter fuel payments for everybody, we would still have a problem in Syria. It's not...
I'm not saying it's solving Syria. I'm saying let's look after the people who live in our country.
Alex, you raise it, but you're quite right, because I wasn't impressed with the number of people that we let into this country. And I actually say, as a group of people, sometimes I find politicians have been very weak as a group and haven't stood up, actually, to the trials and tribulations facing us. And we have hidden behind various treaties or the European Court of Human Rights, something Nigel Farage brought up. Yes, we have. We've looked at those to really run away from the relevant issues of the day, and it's immigration.
Yeah, OK.